Super Mario Brothers is one of those games that I think every person's heard. Even if you're not an avid gamer, you've probably heard of the franchise, at least in some regard, whether it's Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 3, Super Mario Brothers World, Mario Brothers Wii, Super Mario Brothers Galaxy, like Mario Karts, Super Smash Brothers has them. Like Mario's in a lot of the video games that have come. Just he's pushed on you everywhere you go. He's kind of like the Superman or Batman of the video game franchise. Just wherever they can stick Mario, that's where they want him. So for the first review that I'm going to do, and it's just quickly talking about the games and where they come from, and this is just going to be in the classic NES series, is Super Mario Brothers, the very first one. It starts off with Mario and Luigi both going through the Mushroom Kingdom, stomping on Goombas, Koopa Paratroopas, Cheep Cheeps, which are the little fish that kind of make this face. So they're going through fighting all these weird villains, which at the time, me as someone who had basically only seen just Pac-Man, like this was really, really, really awesome graphics. Like I was just blown away by it. You go through and you get power-ups, which is also kind of cool, and because every little kid secretly wants superpowers, so this game had a lot for him in that regard because it was like, whoa, I can grow big, be Super Mario, and then Fire Mario, and then you get the Starman, you get the Starman power, and you run through and just fucking kicking everybody's ass. And it was just one of those games where the repetitive factor of it never really got old. And you usually, if you had an older sibling, you were probably the Luigi of the group. It was a really good game. There's really no difference between Mario and Luigi in the game. Even color-wise, they're pretty similar when you get firepower. The only real difference is when Luigi is regular Luigi or Super Luigi. He's just big white and green, as opposed to the red and brown it looks like is on the Mario palette. Um, there really wasn't any difference in the characters. You go through each castle and you beat Bowser or I don't know if they're really Bowser because if you hit them with firepower, like they turn into like a weird Goomba looking thing and fall into the pit. I don't know. It's really weird how they do that, but it's basically the same mentality. You go through the first four levels of each world, and at the end of it, you fight King Koopa, which wasn't known as Bowser then; he was just King Koopa. And then when you get to the last castle at the end of World 8, which would be 8-4, then you finally rescue Princess Toadstool, which she looks really weird. The graphics for her, like she wasn't attractive at all. She has like this weird big nose and awkward looking head and like superhuman, super humongous head and little body. I don't know. It looked really weird. I was like, oh shit, I went through all these worlds just to rescue you. Go ahead and keep her, Bowser. I don't want her. But for everything that the game had, at the time, like it was just a really good game. And like I said, it's something you could play, co-op with your buddy. You grab a controller, you grab a controller. The only problem with that game that I saw was the fact that if you had a friend that you were playing with, like you both had to go through World 1-1, and if you got to World 1-2 and he was still on 1-1, like he had to go through that level, and you could progress, but they wouldn't, or vice versa. You were maybe stuck behind and they were way ahead of you, so you could beat the game, but where's your partner at? So it's just that's my only real flaw with the game that I see. It's like because a lot of times I played with my cousins playing Mario, and they weren't as good as I was at the game. They actually had friends. Me, I didn't have many friends at school, so I sat there playing this game a lot. Um, but that's the only problem with the game that I see. Outside that, the graphics at the time were really good, especially like I said, since you had really just kind of the still screen Atari type stuff, which the graphics were really, really simple for back then. So when we look at Super Mario Brothers and we go, wow, this game's really cheap on the graphics. For the time, it was really good, and you really got to look at it in that context. So gameplay, I would say, is probably about an 8 out of 10. Storyline wise, it is what it is. It's pretty simple. It doesn't go too far into depth of the story, but there is enough story there where you know what's going on. It's not just I don't know what's going on, but I'll play the game, which a lot of games back then had that problem of just not making a lot of sense. Um, and then the next game of the franchise was Super Mario Brothers 2. And for the long time, like that was my favorite Mario game. I thought that was just, wow, this is so different from anything else that, it has kind of like this is really great. I mean, it was a lot different than the very first Mario Brothers. You didn't have the firepower like you did in that one. You didn't have, you couldn't stomp on the enemies, the Goombas, the Koopa Paratroopers. You couldn't stomp on them. You couldn't do a lot of those things that you did in Mario. But you had a new enemy called the Shy Guy, which were, again, another enemy that makes this face. So, like, I'm kind of wondering what the game people were thinking when they were making these characters. Like, someone's trying to hint to something here, but I'm not judging. It's all good, whatever. But all these enemies in this game, like, you could jump on them, and if you press the B button, you could pick them up and toss them at other enemies. Which, although that wasn't even close to the firepower, it was still something that was very different. So the gameplay-wise, it was a lot of fun. Now, you could be Mario, Luigi, Toad, or Princess Toadstool. And each one of those has their own special abilities. With Mario, he was kind of the all-average. He could run pretty decent speed. He could jump at a pretty decent height. And he could pick up enemies at a pretty decent rate. Luigi was a little slower on the running and on the picking up, but he could jump the highest. And he kind of had this weird little leg thing. I don't know. It was kind of weird, but I was a big Luigi fan because I always felt like he kind of got the shaft from everyone else. So I always used Luigi a lot. Plus, since Mario 1 and Mario 3 were around, like, again, I always got stuck with Luigi. So, kind of had to go back to my roots on that. But with that game, I thought it was really cool that they had differences in the character instead of just being, the same character with a different skin. Per se, it's actually differences in the characters and the gameplay. So it drastically changes how you play the game. There are some places that Luigi can reach that Toad couldn't reach. And Toad, he runs the fastest, and he also jumps the shortest. But he picks up things the quickest too. So again, it's one of those things where it's like, do you want to get further, height-wise, or do you want to pick up enemies faster? Like, it's really just, what are you more comfortable with? And I liked that a lot because there were certain levels where you wanted this character, or other levels where you wanted that one. And it made the gaming experience a lot of fun. The last character in the game that you can be is Princess Toadstool. And for a game that would let you play as a character that in the last one you had to rescue, like, I thought that was really interesting. I used to watch the Super Mario Brothers cartoon, so I was familiar with Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Princess Toadstool. But to actually play the game and to think of the characters from the cartoon, like, it was just really exciting. For me, it was like really, really interactive. Because when I would watch the cartoon, like, I would imagine the gameplay that I would have, and it made it a lot of fun. So for a sequel to the very first Super Mario Brothers, I don't think it failed. But something that is really interesting is this Super Mario Brothers 2 was not an actual Mario game. It was actually released as a game called, I think it was Doku Doku or Doki Doki, something like that, like a repetitive title. Like, look it up on Google. It's really kind of interesting because all they really did was change the skin of each of the character to fit Mario. Everything else, virtually the same thing. So the game that we were supposed to get as Mario 2 was what we now consider in Super Mario All-Stars, and it's called Mario The Lost Levels. That's what everybody in, I think it was Japan, that's what they played as Super Mario Brothers 2. The game that we have, it wasn't even supposed to be a Mario game. So that's something where it's like, some people say, oh, that's my favorite Mario game. It's just kind of ironic because it didn't start off as a Mario Brothers game. Now, the third game in this franchise is my personal favorite. Now, I could play this game on hours from start to finish, not get bored with it at all. Super Mario Brothers 3. When I first played the game, my grandparents went out and they had their own Nintendo. I didn't have it, but we lived next door to them. And my parents never really wanted me to have a Nintendo. But my grandparents got one just because they wanted to be the cool grandparents, which, in my mind, you really brought it. But they got Super Mario Brothers 3 because they heard that was, the new game, and it was a fun game for all the grandkids to play. And the first time I played that game, my mind was just blown. Like, I was like, this is awesome. Like, you can fly in the game, you got firepower in the game, you got Starman. Like, this is everything you could possibly want in a game. And again, like, the graphics. For the time, we look back and we're like, it's simple graphics. But when you compare Super Mario Bros. 3 to Super Mario Bros. 1, dude, complete difference in the game. It's a really awesome upgrade on all the graphics and everything. The thing that was really cool about this game was the fact that they added so many more enemies, such as the Thomps, which are the like statue things that fall down and they got spikes all around them. And those are in the dungeons usually. You've got walking piranha plants, which up to that point they had only been inside the warp zones. You had all the upgraded powers, which, like I said, you got the raccoon suit, the sledgehammer brother suit, um, the Tanuki suit, which is kind of a cool suit where you press down and B and you turn into a statue, and then the enemies like walk right behind you. And I mean, it's no different than the raccoon suit, except that you can turn into a statue, which there's not really a lot of things that you can use that for because it gets, you only turn, for a statue for probably about 3 or 4 seconds before you go back to regular Tanuki, whatever you are, Mario or Luigi. But it was just kind of a cool feature because again, it hadn't been done before. So I think the gameplay for the levels, you can warp zone to the different levels, which again at the time that was kind of a cool feature to have because you had so many different worlds. You had the first level, which was I think grassland. The second one was desert. Third one was water. The fourth one was giant. The fifth one was sky, I believe. The sixth one I think was ice. The seventh one was pipeland, and then you had darkland, which was number 8. And they had so many different levels, that were completely different, as opposed to like the very first Mario game where it gets kind of repetitive. With this one, you may have 1 or 2 levels that were similar, but there was enough of a difference to make it interesting each and every time. And with all the different enemies that they included, with the inclusion of the Koopa Kids, which they finally gave Bowser a name. Bowser the King Koopa is what they called him in the instruction booklet. But then you had the Koopa Kids, which at the end of each level, he had 7 kids. So at each level, you had the airship that you had to jump on and fight all the Koopa Kids with it. So it was an interesting gameplay because you're kind of like it expands of what you already know, and it was just a lot of fun. So they released all 3 of those games into a Super Nintendo cartridge called Super Mario All Stars. And then later on, they included Mario World in the Super Mario All Stars 2. The only difference, they converted a lot of the graphics to the Super NES version. So you had a more polished over Super Mario Brothers, a more polished looking Super Mario Brothers 3. You also had, like, little things to me matter. Like, when I see on the cover, like right here, Mario has blue overalls, red shirt. But when you play the game, he's got like black overalls and a red shirt, red hat. Like to me, like little things like that kind of bother me because it's like, well, it's supposed to be blue. It's not black. Why is it black? I mean, I know the reasons because you can only do so much with the NES system, but they kind of fixed that on the Super Mario Brothers or Super Mario All Stars. They fixed that. So when I played that game, I was just like, oh yes, finally they got it right. I felt like these 3 games were kind of like, the beta versions of what, finally came out with All Stars. And then the only other difference with All Stars between Super Mario All Stars and these games is Luigi also is, it's a different skin than Mario. It's not just a green version of Mario, which again, for, purists like me, I look at that and I'm like, Luigi doesn't look like that. So why is he like that in the game? So for me, it's just like my childhood growing up, like these 3 games were really important. Video games were really important to me. These games were all a lot of fun. They're games that I'll take my little Sparrow and we'll play them. When she comes over, hangs out. They're games my little brother Pete, like I'll try to make him play them. He's not really into the NES stuff. Like he loves PS3, PS4, Xbox stuff. Like that's more his stuff. But I'll, from time to time, I'll drag him into playing these games and it's not his cup of tea, but first, I don't know. It's a lot of fun to play. I'd recommend for anyone that's not completely serious about gaming, but someone that just wants to goof around for a couple of minutes. It's a lot of fun. I'd recommend them, and yeah, I don't know. It's memory lane, man. Keep on geeking on, guys.